Good morning, everybody. It is a beautiful day here in America. Welcome back to the campaign trail. My name is Jared, and today we'll be covering our preliminary analysis for the first Democratic primary debate. The things I'll be covering in this video are the basic info of the debate, so where it's being held, what time it's at, what channel it's on, as well as the reasons why the debate was set up the way it was. I will also cover the qualifications that the candidates had to meet in order to make it to the debate stage. I will then talk about the candidates who did not make the debate stage and kind of discuss very quickly what they should do with their campaigns from here. Then I will talk about how the lineups for each night were decided, and then I'll go through each of the lineups so you know exactly who is on what night. Lastly, I will pick 5 candidates who I believe will benefit the most from the debates, and then I'll pick 5 candidates who I believe will be hurt by the debates. And then after all of that, we'll close with some final thoughts. With that being said, let's get started. So first things first, we are going to cover the basic information about these debates. They are being held in Miami, Florida over 2 nights, and each night is going to have 10 candidates up on stage. These nights are June 26th and the 27th, and they will be both at 9 to 11 p.m. each night Eastern Standard Time. These will be broadcasted on NBC News, MSNBC, and Telemundo. Now, what exactly did the candidates need to do in order to make it onto the debate stage? Well, the DNC outlined 2 ways of which candidates can make it up on stage. Meeting just one of these qualifications was enough to get you up on stage. The first way that you could qualify was a polling qualification, in which the candidate had to receive at least 1% in at least 3 different DNC-approved polls. And the second way that you could qualify was a fundraising qualification, which meant that you had to raise a minimum of $65,000 with a minimum of 200 unique donors from 20 different states. In the event that there were more than 20 candidates, the DNC did have some tie-breaking rules. Candidates who met both qualifications would be given priority over others, and the leftover spots will be given to those with the highest polling averages according to the DNC. They did have a tiebreaker should there be more than 20 candidates who met both qualifications, but that didn't happen, so we're not really going to talk about it. So, now that we've covered that, before we get to those who actually did make the debate stage, I do want to talk about those who did not make the debate stage and what it means for their campaigns now. There are 24 major candidates in the Democratic primary at the moment, and with only 20 spots in the debates, that meant that 4 were going to miss out on the debates. For those 4 people, is this the end of their campaign? Do they not have a shot at the Democratic nomination anymore? Lord, no. But it is a pretty big setback. So the first person I'll talk about is Seth Moulton, the representative from Massachusetts. I think he's still got a chance. He definitely, he jumped into the race late, which made it to where he had a hard time getting enough donors before the debates. So that makes a little bit of sense. And also, he's not a very well-known representative. He definitely still has a chance if he has a decent personality. So if he can find ways to kind of get himself out there without the debates, he definitely still has a good chance. But he's got a big uphill battle here now, and he needs to get himself back with everybody else very quickly. Otherwise, he will essentially be out of this race. The next candidate we have is Mike Gravel, the former senator from Alaska who served, I think, last in like 1981. It makes a little bit of sense why he didn't make it into the debates. His campaign is being run by teenagers, which is interesting. He kind of came into it admitting that he didn't really want to win the nomination. He only wanted to make the debate so he could talk about foreign policy, stuff like that. So it makes sense that he didn't quite get the donors and stuff like that and the support that he needed, considering he pretty much openly admitted that he did not want to win the race. They took that statement back later on, but I think by then it was too late and people kind of caught on to what he was doing. So Mike Gravel pretty much out of this race. He admitted himself he didn't want to win it, so I'm not going to consider him in this race pretty much any longer. The next candidate that missed the debates is Wayne Messam, the mayor from Miami, Florida. This guy is basically trying to prove that anybody can become president regardless of like what your qualifications are, which, you know, fine, interesting. But he's done nothing since launching the campaign. I took a look, and it's just been a real long time since he's done anything of note in this campaign. He hasn't really been doing a lot of stumps or anything like that. It doesn't seem like he's really running anymore, but he still hasn't officially dropped out yet, so he's still in it. I would say he's probably, out of the candidates that said they wanted to win, he's probably got the biggest uphill battle at this point, mainly because of name recognition. He could get back into it, maybe. I highly doubt it. The last candidate who did not make the debates is the one that can probably get back into it the quickest. In fact, he's already qualified for the July debates because right after the DNC announced who was in the debates for this one, another poll came out with him at 1%, so therefore he did officially qualify for the ones in July, which has the same qualifications as this debate. This is Steve Bullock. He's the governor from Montana. He's running a bit more as a moderate, and like I said, he could definitely jump right back into this. He just needs to get his polling average just a little bit higher so that he doesn't have to worry about any tiebreakers in July that might take him out as well. But yeah, definitely Steve Bullock can jump right back into this, get back on the debate stage. He's still in the running, definitely. Now, for the candidates that did make the debate stage, how did the DNC decide who would be on what night? Well, it basically came down to random allotment, but that comes with an asterisk. Basically, they took all the candidates that they found polled at an average of higher than 2% and put them in their own little pool. And they took everybody else and put them in another pool. And then they drew from those so that there's an equal amount of people each night who are above 2% in the polls, as well as an equal amount of people who are polling less than 2%. They did this so that they could avoid lopsided debates. They're trying to learn from the mistakes that Republicans made in 2016. Back then, Republicans, when they had their massive field of I think it was 17 candidates, what they did is they had an undercard debate, which played right before the debates for the main debate. And in this undercard debate was all the people who are polling at 1 to 2%. The people who were basically the lower tier. And with that, nobody watched it, and so it gave those candidates no chance to really make an impact. And so Democrats are now trying to make it to where even low polling people can make an impact in these debates. Did they succeed? I'll talk a bit more about that in my final thought. So now that we know how the rosters were decided, let's go ahead and tell you who is on what night. For the first night, those candidates are Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, Julian Castro, the former mayor of San Antonio and the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development during the Obama administration, John Delaney, the representative from Maryland, Tulsi Gabbard, the representative from Hawaii, Jay Inslee, the former governor of Washington, Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, Beto O'Rourke, the Democratic candidate for Senate in Texas in 2018, Tim Ryan, the representative from Ohio, and Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts. For the second night, we have Michael Bennet, the senator from Colorado, Joe Biden, the former vice president during the Obama administration, Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Kirsten Gillibrand, the senator from New York, Kamala Harris, the senator from California, John Hickenlooper, the former governor of Colorado, Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, Eric Swalwell, a representative from California, Marianne Williamson, a spiritual teacher and guider, and finally Andrew Yang, the founder of Venture for America. So now that I've told you who all is in the debates, I'm going to pick 5 candidates who I think will benefit from these debates and 5 candidates who I think the debates will end up hurting. The first beneficiary I'm going to say is Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's in pretty prime position here. She's the only one out of the top 5 vote getters from the polls to be put onto the first night. So she's kind of the top tier candidate in the first debate, but she also doesn't have that front runner status that Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders kind of has. So people won't quite be gunning for her. And because she's a bit more policy oriented, she'll have lots of specific answers versus a lot of these kind of lower candidates who may not have a lot of specifics behind them. So I think Elizabeth Warren is going to do very well in these debates, and because she's kind of that star of the first debate, she's going to get lots of attention. The next person I think will benefit from these debates is the South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. He was polling in the 0-1% range, but then he started getting some media attention, then all of a sudden he just shot up. But what's impressive about him is that even though he shot up, he still has pretty low name recognition and has a pretty high amount of support behind him already. So I think with these debates, he's going to have a bigger chance to shine with a much larger audience. And I think a lot more people are going to know who Pete Buttigieg is after this debate, especially with how articulate he is with answers. I think a lot of people will hop behind Pete Buttigieg after this debate. The next candidate that I think will benefit from the debates is Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang has already got himself a bit of a following on the internet, especially around YouTube and stuff like that. He's been on a lot of podcasts, political podcasts that people tend to listen to, like Joe Rogan Experience. He was on the Sunday Special with Ben Shapiro and quite a few other political podcasts. He's really kind of starting to get himself a little base with that internet audience. And I think that now that he is actually on the debate stage and will have an audience outside of the internet, I think there will be plenty of people who haven't heard of him because they aren't really on the internet that often will hear him for the first time. And I think that a lot of people will start jumping on with Andrew Yang, especially among voters who tend to like their candidates to be very clear on their positions on a lot of different issues. The next person I think that will benefit from this debate is the senator from California, Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris has kind of come into this primary with a very prosecutorial attitude towards President Trump, and I think that a debate setting is pretty much the perfect place for her to really prove those chops, and I think she will. I think she will lay out the case against Donald Trump, and I think that a lot of people hearing that will want to get behind her, especially if she's articulate enough. So I think that Kamala Harris definitely has a chance to boost her reputation among this crowd. And finally, the last person I believe will benefit from this debate is Senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar. Now, a little bit of a spoiler, I do not think that Joe Biden is going to do well in these debates, and so I believe he will lose support, and therefore a more moderate candidate is set to take on some of his support. And I think if Amy Klobuchar does well in these debates, which I think she will be a direct beneficiary of that. Amy Klobuchar in the past has been very clear on her issues. She's been very articulate in how she wants to do things. And so I think people will find that a very appealing alternative to Joe Biden should he not do well tomorrow in the debates. So now that I've covered those who I think will benefit from their performance in the debates, I'm going to cover 5 candidates who I think will be hurt by their performance in the debates. So the first person I'll talk about, I've already spoiled. I'm going to go ahead and say that Joe Biden will be hurt by his campaign performance tomorrow. Joe Biden in the past has not done very well at debates, so there's that. But not only that, his whole campaign strategy so far has had him do a lot of hiding. He hasn't been doing lots of speeches, and this seems to be in order to keep him from saying dumb things, which has derailed his campaign in the past, which is understandable. But also, now that he's going to be up on a debate stage with 9 other people, all of whom will probably be attacking him, he will be forced to elaborate more on his positions. And I do think that during that, he will make a mistake somewhere along the way that will hurt his chances at winning the Democratic nomination. The next person who I think will be hurt by their performance tomorrow in the debates is the second frontrunner, Bernie Sanders. Now, this isn't really to say that Bernie Sanders will be making lots of mistakes. No, I don't think that's how Bernie Sanders really works. But Bernie Sanders' biggest thing right now is that he has to prove to the Democratic primary voters that he is the guy to keep going with, even though a lot of other people are taking up what were essentially his positions in 2016. Now, I think the Democratic primary voters are looking for somebody new, somebody fresher. And so I think Bernie Sanders is going to have a hard time convincing people of that. And I'm going to make the prediction now that Bernie Sanders does not convince a lot of people tomorrow night that he is the one to go with, especially when so many other people up on that debate stage are taking his positions. The next person I would think will be hurt by their performance tomorrow in the debate is none other than Beto O'Rourke, the senatorial candidate for the Texas Senate seat last year in 2018. Beto, since he's gotten started, his campaign's kind of had an identity crisis. He's really not sure what he wants his campaign to be, and I don't think he fixes that tomorrow night. In fact, I think it gets worse for him tomorrow night, especially since when people start asking him about his policy stances, he tends to get a bit more vague and not very specific. And I don't think that's what people are looking for when it comes to a Democratic candidate. And so I think Beto will definitely have a rough time tomorrow night, especially if people decide to turn their guns on him and start asking him very specific questions. The last two candidates that I think will be hurt by the performances in the debates, I'm going to go ahead and throw together because they kind of have similar themes to me, and those are Bill de Blasio and Kirsten Gillibrand, both of whom kind of come off as very inauthentic to people. And long story short, I don't think that either of them are going to do anything tomorrow night that's going to help that perception. Kirsten Gillibrand, less so probably than Bill de Blasio. Bill de Blasio has a pretty low approval rating, even among Democrats, based off like his corruption scandals and stuff like that. Like I said, both of them I don't think will do themselves any favors tomorrow night. Alrighty, now that we've kind of covered all of that, let's get some final thoughts here. So I posed a question earlier: do I think the DNC succeeded in not having lopsided debates? And I think the answer to that to me is yes and no. On its face, it's pretty glaring that 4 of the top 5 vote getters for right now are all in a debate with each other on the second night, leaving Elizabeth Warren all on her own on the first night. Now, it seems what they've done with Elizabeth Warren is they've given her the first debate. That one is expected to have a higher viewership because this is the first debate. So people are going to tune into that to see all these. And it's not like the undercard debate with the Republicans 3 years ago where it was right before the real debate. It wasn't during prime time. This one's during prime time. Everybody in that debate is still going to have a chance to have an audience and to shine. And then the second debate is going to draw a big audience because you have your top vote getters, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders. Overall, I don't think it's going to really impact the race that much. At the end of the day, I think that people are going to tune into both of these debates because people do want to see who President Trump is possibly facing for the 2020 general election. Now, I guess I should probably make a disclaimer here. With the part of the video where I'm talking about who I think will benefit and who I think will be hurt, that's not set in stone. It's just what I think. If you think that one of the candidates are going to do well tomorrow, albeit cheer them on, that's fine with me. That's just my opinion. And again, not set in stone by any means. I could watch a debate tomorrow night and suddenly Bill de Blasio is the front runner. This kind of stuff happens. Or suddenly Pete Buttigieg just completely flops and does not do well. I mean, this happened in 2016. Marco Rubio, I thought, was going to do very well in one of the debates, and then suddenly he was being taken down by, of all people, Chris Christie. Crazy things have happened. Again, don't take any of this too seriously, especially that last part where I'm talking about who I think will benefit and who I think won't. At the end of the day, it's my opinion. Don't worry about it too much. I guess it's a good transition into what do you guys think? Do you guys think, or who do you think will be benefiting from their performance tomorrow? Who do you think is going to get hurt by the performance? I want a lively discussion. Please keep it civil, as always. There's too much crap in politics already. Let's keep our comment section somewhat civil. And so yeah, with that, look forward to watching the debate. I think it's going to be great. I think there's going to be some good discussions. And I will see you guys after the debates with a post-debate analysis. Thank you guys and have a wonderful day.